the aide Azazel, PaRaDiSe aide, and the Messiah Mashiach surmise. There are blessings that come wrapped in curses. No hay mal que por bien no venga. This coronavirus is the case in point, and unless and until we crack it, we won't be out of the woods anytime soon. The question is, what is the silver lining of this pandemic? Let's go to the snake plague for comparison. The people slandered against GD and Moses, so GD sent an Nahash snake plague. People prayed to Moses for relief, and he was told by GD to make an effigy of a snake and put it on top of a pole. People who looked at it would then be cured. The source of healing was the same as that of destruction. People will be cured of the Nahash snake bite of slander when they look at the pole with the Nahoshet copper snake effigy. Today, people will know the path to cure the coronavirus plague once they gain awareness that it's idolatry of slander that's underlying it all. The first question that comes to mind is, what idolatry are we talking about that's being committed today? People end up adoring what works for them. If money gets you what makes you happy, you follow the money. If praying to a statue brings benefits, well, then saintly worship. It was Spiritism in the Neolithic age that seemed helpful to cavemen to be better hunters. It all goes back to causality, to cause and effect. But if there are many principles, surely they take after a single principle. That's where idol worshiping comes in instead of choosing the Creator itself. Let's take it from the top on how to make whole our broken world. I endorse stricto sensu Torah Bible of revelation to Moses at Mount Sinai as the only valid source over the Lato sensu Tanakh Bible, which includes the inspirational prophets and the enlightened writing books. Everything that is in the Torah teaching is in, and everything which is not is out. Let's jump straight into Azazel. What is, or who is Azazel? In Leviticus 16, 5:22, we have one he-goat to GD for sin offering and one to Azazel for atonement and later to be set free in the desert. So who or what is Azazel? A paradise blessing inside the coronavirus curse. In topic 2.2 previous, we quoted verse Leviticus 16, 5-10. Now let's do the remaining verses of interest in Leviticus 16, 20-22. The choices available to the sages, having missed the takeaway message of PaRaDiSe at Genesis 1:1 a aleph, are on the one hand to say that it's huk, decree, beyond human grasp, or on the other hand to make something up, doubling down on dualism. It would have been a lot better had they simply honestly conceded not getting it, than shutting the door to later generations trying out. We have to grow to measure up to size. Azazel is us as co-creators of the creative creature of ourselves. The reason I endorse the stricto sensu Torah Bible is twofold. Since it was given to all of us, that means that it should be dirt floor level and not require PhD or religious doctorate to fathom it. The second is because the Torah marks the limits of my Bible knowledge. The take-home message of the Torah Bible is at its top at Genesis 1:1 a aleph. In a nutshell, it's triad parts PRD, one whole S as paradise. Nothing more, nothing less in plain English. What called my attention of Azazel was this leveling it with Adonai in, quote, one he-goat for Adonai, GD, for sin offering, and one goat for Azazel, for kaper atonement. I had never come across any such passage or anything coming close to it. All are speaking down, so to speak, not across. Actually, suddenly came to my mind another occasion, equally intriguing, which occurred in the creation story. It's the only other place, to my knowledge, where we, quote, we appears. That is, the creator and creatives in partnership, as it were. In Genesis 1:26 we have, and GD said, let us make Adam in our image, after our likeness. Again, just like with Azazel, explicitly, who is this character, us, implicitly? In Leviticus 16:8 it says, and Aaron shall place upon the two he-goat lots, one for Adonai and one lot for Azazel. Who is this add-on in us, who is charged with making Adam man? We were somehow admitted as junior partners in creation. Of course, along the way, we managed to mess things up, hence the need to kaper, atonement, for us in the name of Azazel by way of the second he-goat. The fault must have to do with idolatry, since this is the most grievous offense possible to Adonai GD in the Torah Bible. So, this is telling us that Adam was made in the image and likeness of both GD and us, quote. Note that Betzalmeinu, in our image, quote, starts with Be, in, all the while Kidmuteinu, quote, after our likeness, starts with Ki, after. This we take to mean inside image D and outside likeness P. This would make Adam R, man R, and overseeing all this Elohim GDS. But since Adonai is everything, Azazel must be part of it. And who but, quote, us, since it requires atonement. So Azazel is the human project in its image and its likeness, with the charge of ruling, quote, the earth, in parallel to Adonai GD's, quote, creating the universe. The atonement is for Azazel to do its job well, but it needs our help. We can't be setting it up for failure and blaming the creator, asking for a second chance afterwards. For that, we need to get rid of the Messiah Mashiach surmise as soon as possible. The passage that immediately comes to mind in pursuit of this purpose is that of holiness in Leviticus 20:26. Quote, you shall be holy for me, for holy I am, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh GD, and I have separated dialogue with you from the peoples to be mine, unquote. Perhaps this must be to what the Torah teaching is continuously attesting, referring to about holiness as a holy people, as whole people, so to speak. Now we must throw in the straw of Leviticus 20:27 that broke the camel's double hump. Quote, any man or woman, if there should be amongst them of necromancy or idoni, divination, certainly they shall be put to death. While it may be a stretch this early in the game to equate of necromancy and idoni oracles with a Messiah Mashiach surmise respectively, yet the similitude is alarming. That is, on the one hand, falling for the non-real of the non-living as non-peshat plane, P of necromancy, and on the other hand, for falling for the non-imaginary of the non-conceivable as non-derived discovery, D of Yidoni oracle. This sort of reminds me of endorsing the twilight zone of mere suspicion as impossible to prove or disprove. All that's keeping us from being holy, as Adonai is holy, are, quote, of and Yidoni, which are of the same essence as Messiah Mashiach, though varying in degree, but not in kind. Inherent to human condition is this Messiah Mashiach character. Messiah Mashiach comes to represent both these, quote, of Yidoni, inherent human tendencies, respectively. On the one hand, Messiah communicating with the spirits of the dead, and on the other hand, the Mashiach communicating with the minds of the gods. Let me try to spell out the character of Messiah Mashiach insofar as it makes Azazel be in dire need of kaper, atonement. First, let's take up of necromancy, magic, sorcery, same thing. To inquire by way of the dead about the afterlife and regarding what awaits us in, quote, this life. This is attested in the spelling of Aleph, A, S separated by the Vav, and the Beth, B. The fault or flaw lies in trying to connect directly one whole sought secret S with the Rosh discovered D in order to know Peshat plain P. That is, to know about the things of the world, but bypassing B part of the triad parts PRD of language. Now to Yidoni, oracle, divination. Using mediums, priestesses to communicate with the gods to reply to human questionings is divination. Like the oracle at Delphi regarding who was the wisest man living. The reply was Socrates, who responded, "How could that be, since he only knew that he knew nothing?" The word comes from Yad, know, and from there, Yidoni, knower, clairvoyant. It refers to divination. Also, we have Yod, hand, Dalet, door, Ayin, eye, hence Yada, knowledge, and additionally Nun, individual, hence clairvoyant, psychic, as one who can open the door and see beyond, figuratively speaking. The fault or flaw lies in trying to connect directly one whole sought secret S with remes, remit R in order to know Peshat plain P, that is, to know about the things of the world, likewise bypassing being part of the triad parts P or D of language. The Messiah Mashiach surmise is a subterfuge of the prime violation of creation covered up with evocative celestial wording. The classical wolf with sheep clothing of the fork-tongued snake of invalid shortcuts. Idolatry is anything that gets in the way of creator and creative creatures, for it usurps the prime dialogue that should exist between creator and creative creature. The Messiah Mashiach surmise is a prime suspect of committing idolatry in this investigation. Of course, everyone is assumed innocent until proven guilty. This isn't about playing the devil's advocate. This is plain and simple prosecution of wrongdoing. The suspicion comes from the fact that this concept, Messiah Mashiach, dates to Second Temple rabbinism. It's equivalent to an out-of-the-blue salvation of sorts, all the while in the Torah, the only salvation is eschatological at the end of times. Nothing in between. That was the whole purpose of Revelation to begin with, to provide us with the necessary and sufficient resources for both earthly success and heavenly salvation for the duration of life. Surely, the Creator didn't set us up for failure. However, the surmise does. The Messiah Mashiach surmise certainly falls in this category, for it interferes with carrying out the prime commandment in Genesis 1:1a Aleph of PaRaDiSe. Furthermore, its delaying tactics of the coming of the Messiah Mashiach is a monkey wrench. It's as if revelation at Sinai of Torah, Bible to Moses, had been insufficient for us to achieve happiness through earthly success and heavenly salvation. Only the Torah teaching is perfect. All else is just perfectible. We just had to do our homework studying it. If the Messiah Mashiach surmise is true, then don't worry. But if it's false, then do start worrying. It's not true because it doesn't take into account Genesis 1:1a Aleph, lesson 101 of the Torah teaching. Its importance lies in that following everything in the Bible, but missing the beginning of Genesis, amounts to setting up Azazel for failure, meaning a dependence on Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh even after we were given the means to achieve independence within our condition as creative creatures, of course. There's an inherent confusion of the derived cover of the spiritual as triad parts PRD and the one whole S of the divine Vita Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. The risk is falling into idol worship due to bad guidance by the sages, all the while convinced that it's in line with Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Sure, it has an element of truth, debate, as covering, all the while the core is Like the idol, the signs appeal to the eye, but inside is all outside. It's full of emptiness. Beware, it gets tricky. Booby traps abound. I can get easily contaminated, requiring continuous restarting at all times and places and by everybody. But where to restart? To Genesis 1:1a Aleph. Let's go back and retry connecting the puzzle pieces. The snake effigy is cure for slanderous idolatry of Messiah, Mashiach. Is idol worshipping? Messiah, Mashiach, and Ov necromancy, Yidoni divination are not the same thing, respectively. That is, in spite of the fact that quantitatively they are not the same, qualitatively they most certainly are. The importance of this comparison is highlighted in no uncertain terms in the Moses episode of hitting the rock twice in order to get water. Moses and Aaron were punished in the rock incident for not giving proper place to Adonai as per se as his Torah teaching. The fault was not sanctifying his name before Israel, and now with the Messiah Mashiach before humanity. The leadership was ultimately planting the seed of disrespect in the hearts of the people by not adequately sanctifying the role of the Creator. The only remedy to counteract bad habit is returning to the primeval message and restarting afresh time and again at each and every turn of the long and winding road of life. I just can't understand it any other way. If one of the he-goats was for Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh GD and the other for Azazel, and there being only GD, then it must be referring to this lack of seeing the landscape getting lost in the pieces of the puzzle. But this is the whole purpose of the human project of creation. This is no small matter. It goes all the way back to Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, to their inability to see GD and instead go for the forked-tongued Nahash snake. But this is nothing other than dualism, what we've been talking about all this time. The problem I see is that it's hard to keep our eyes on the road all the while our hearts beating for heaven. That is, how can we be doing the universal of creation in the particular of our individual existences? This particular in the universal is Azazel in Adonai GD. Is it that we've been conditioned to idolatry and civilization, having missed the primeval principle at the tip of the Torah, coming up instead with this Messiah Mashiach surmise fabrication which only worsens things? By endorsing this belief in postponing of the coming, we're actually relegating Adonai and Azazel to the background. Just like there's the principle of principles, the creator of creation, there's also one mirage of mirages, idol of idols, and that's none other than MM. Where does it say swords turn into plowshares and not no war anymore? Isaiah 2:3-4. But though this is a noble thought, it somehow gets convoluted with the Messiah Mashiach surmise, which dates from the Second Temple times. All this we can still make it happen on our own resources of PaRaDiSe, with no need to recur to notions that, however unintentionally, do end up being offensive to the Creator, who, by the way, is a very jealous GD and not short on memory. It's not Messiah Mashiach of Savior anointed as dualism, but as enthusiasm, PaRaDiSe, which is going to save us from the coronavirus. MM is quote 3 of tripartite dualism, not quite measuring up to, quote, triad of PaRaDiSe. As dualism, this well-intentioned and sweet-tasting Messiah Mashiach of Savior anointed degenerates into Ov necromancy and Yidoni oracles, instead of exalting us unto holiness. That's the whole problem. Idolatry, being out, needless to say, would require, in place of the non-messianic age of M&M, one of enthusiasm, of anacelism. The idea is that our being, one whole S, is becoming as triad parts PRD of life being in spirit, body, and mind. Let's give ourselves in Azazel a chance. Azazel is GD's aide, its helper, regarding our creation as creative creatures within the bigger picture of creation. Azazel had the specific charge of looking after us, all the while GD takes care of the rest from micro to macro all across mass space-time. But yes, Azazel's jealous nature takes after his bosses. So ouch, be careful what you say and do in this regard, unless you want to shoot yourself on the foot. This is where the Messiah Mashiach surmise bothers me, not giving his due regard to deity. Because dissing doesn't help, but also because it's setting him up for failure and then crying out for the MM bailout. Throughout the time, Azazel has been called by all sorts of names: Mr. Evil, Demon,
the he-goat itself, and so on. In following rabbinism, which passed over the tip of the arrow in Genesis 1:1a aleph, and its take-to-heart message of PaRaDiSe, we're dissing both Adonai and its helper Azazel. It's like not following the instructions in the manual and then blaming the manufacturer for imperfection. Come on, let's get serious. It's like sex education. When is it the right time to talk about it with our kids? Not too early, not too late either. And what about letting go of pets and toys? And to the point, when is it high time to drop the Messiah Mashiach surmise of the Tanakh Bible and embrace the Azazel imperative of the Torah Bible? Let not this coronavirus perfect crisis go to waste. Let's put it to good use. Pending still to address it is what's today deep-rooted as idolatry in our midst. This theme will continue developing in the following episodes of the closing chapter. Well, that's all, people. Yours truly, Rick, your Charro Anusim, and GD Bless. Austin, Texas, capital of the world.